Heritage Foundation Senior Fellow, Mike Gonzalez. It's fancy meeting you here in the old city of Panama City. This is the old section here in Panama. You have spent a little time in Panama before. You were here in 1988.
Yeah, almost 4 decades ago.
A little bit ago, as a journalist.
By the way, it's a beautiful city.
It's a gorgeous city.
Yeah, I was here. It was my first foreign assignment.
Okay.
It was Panama. This was when...
who were you working for at the time?
I was working for Agence France-Presse, AFP, the wire service. I was a wire service guy. I had interned at UPI. I love the wires. And in fact, soon after I left here, I was traveling with the Mujahideen in Afghanistan. I did everything I wanted to do as a foreign correspondent.
Wow. So you land here, you spent about a month here reporting on the situation,
right?
The political situation. What was the political situation like in 1988 here?
Well, Noriega had suddenly become an enemy of the United States. George H.W. Bush was president. Noriega had been involved in drug smuggling, and President Bush was putting pressure on him, and there were many demonstrations against Noriega because he was a dictator, and then there were street thugs that were demonstrating on behalf of Noriega. They were paid mobs.
And in your reporting, you began to notice some interesting themes around the language.
Yes, so I began to notice that the pro-government groups were using communist slogans, which were carbon copies of the Cuban Revolution. They were saying the same things, and I started writing about that. In fact, I only wrote about it once. And
they didn't love that.
Yeah, so the next day, the hotel called me and said, the police are rifling through your things in your room, you better stay away. I called my editor and I said, they are waiting to arrest me at my hotel. I think I'm gonna go inside the American embassy. And my editor said, no, don't do that, get arrested and we'll pull you out. We'll do anything we can to pull you out. If you go inside the American embassy, it's gonna become a huge problem. So I did what my editor told me to do. I was a cub reporter. I went to my hotel and turned myself in. They arrested me, insulted me, put me in a police van, and took me to some kind of judge who sat and said, you're expelled from Panama, you're going to prison. And I spent the night in prison.
What was that like? What was that night like?
It was a night. Let's not over-egg it.
You survived?
Yeah, I was at the airport, at the Martha Hills Airport. They had a jail underneath. I was with they had caught a bunch of illegal immigrants at the U.S. border that day, from Bolivia mostly. And Panama was a clearinghouse to send them back to their homes. So they put me in with illegal immigrants, and I started talking to them. They allowed them to go get dinner, and they didn't allow me because I was more of a political nature. So they were very kind. They all pinched in and bought me a sandwich.
Very kind. Yes. So you've experienced the kindness of the people of Panama for a long time, all the way back. How old were you when that happened?
I was 27.
Okay.
I was my first foreign assignment. When I got back to Washington, to my news desk, the next thing I did is I asked to go to Hong Kong, and they sent me to Hong Kong, where I ended up living 8 years.
Wow, 8 years in Hong Kong.
Yeah.
Okay, so fascinating that now this week, been back in Panama City, you had the opportunity.
For the first time.
This is your first time back since
Yeah, it's my first time back, yeah.
Well, and on this trip, so last time you were here, you got arrested.
Yeah.
On this trip, you met with the foreign minister and with the president of Panama, President Mulino.
Yeah.
A little bit different, and I think really speaks to the change.
Oh, absolutely. President Mulino is an elected leader. In fact, he was arrested by Noriega as well, apparently, and the foreign minister, to start the meeting, said, here's Mike Gonzalez. He was also arrested by Noriega. And he said, wow, that's a privilege, the president said to me. And I said, I didn't want to sabotage the meeting. I said, well, that happened a very long time ago. It was only one night. And he said, no, this is history we share together. This is history now forever.
Wow. If you could summarize how much Panama has changed since 1988? Well,
Panama is now a free place that elects its own government. Back then it wasn't. It was, and whatever the problems are with Panama, it's got an elected government. Back then it didn't. Noriega was not elected, and Noriega wanted to stay in power forever. He wanted to become a Marxist dictator. He started out as a common drug smuggler, and then he realized that going the Marxist way was his ticket. George H.W. Bush had other ideas and ousted him the year after I was arrested and kicked out.
Wow. And so that big change, of course, there was a major shift in the country. The U.S. launches an invasion in 1989. They throw that dictator out.
Noriega, actually, he hid at the papal nuncio's residence I believe for a couple of months.
Okay.
And the papal nuncio, you know, we played very loud music outside the papal nuncio's residence. The papal nuncio would go to him. I heard that the nuncio would go to Noriega and say, "How long do you want to stay here, washing your underwear?" And so Noriega turned himself in, and he spent the rest of his days in a prison in Miami, where he died.
Wow. So today, what is the direction that President Mulino is taking Panama in?
President Mulino has an opportunity to do the right thing by his country and by the United States, make sure that the canal does not fall into direct or indirect, the direct or indirect hands of China, the People's Republic of China, which is to say the Chinese Communist Party.
Yeah, absolutely. Mike, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you for all of the great work that you do for the Heritage Foundation and for being here in Panama.
Great, thank you.